Hi, my name's Lee Bivona, and this is the next video clip in the series called A Life Worth Living. And this story is called The Mantle of Love. And this one takes place in a hospice setting. I had been seeing a gentleman who was getting close to Heaven's Gates throughout a couple of weekends that I was working. One of the things I was able to observe in this family and in this man's friends, they were all about in their mid-70s, his peer group, was the incredible, endearing attachment that his friends had. These were men that had worked together for 30, 40 years, had seen their children all raised, career paths changed, just about everything. Some were even from high school. So with this 75-year-old man, what I was witnessing in the times that I was seeing him for these two primary weekends was a lot of tears. And mostly from the men. They had grown up so endearingly with each other and shared so much of their own lives. It was very evident in the beginning that they had come from a position of love in relationship to each other, in relationship to how to live their life right, and to their families. So watching these men as this man physically wound down was quite fascinating. The first weekend I want to address, and then I'll address the weekend that he passed, we could say died, and I really like the term spiritual graduation, that he had his spiritual graduation. The first weekend, he started out actually on Thursday, Friday, a little confused and weak, but that confusion and weakness progressed really, really quickly. And come Saturday night of the first weekend, he was asking his daughter, what day is it? And she would tell him, he says, okay, tell me when it's Tuesday. And so she would say, no, Daddy, it's Wednesday. No, Daddy, it's Thursday, and kind of move through the calendar that way. So that became kind of a mantra. Nobody really knew why, and when they asked him, he really didn't have an answer why, but it was important for him to know that Tuesday was approaching. And his body began to wind down. He really didn't present himself as being confused. He really was just kind of winding down. And there's so many ways that a person can kind of finish their bodily journey here on earth, with pain, with distress, confusion, or a really heavy kind of depressed withdrawal. And he really wasn't doing any of that. He was just kind of retreating softly, but still was able to kind of come out enough to really ask this question, is it Tuesday yet? And so Thursday, Friday, Saturday came, and that was when I came in during the weekend. And he was very interesting. Within several hours in cycles, he would ask, is it Tuesday yet? Sunday came, Monday came, and then Tuesday came as I got report from the weekend that I was off, the weekdays I was off. And so when Tuesday came, there was kind of an expectation that something was going to happen. So Tuesday morning came, and his daughter, kind of his primary caregiver, he actually had 3 daughters and his wife, but this one daughter was kind of the cornerstone, the matriarch of both generations of his children, and really kind of looked after Mom as well. So Tuesday came, and as soon as he realized that it was Tuesday, he changed his question. And the question was, is it 10? So of course, kind of glancing left and right, like, okay, Tuesday at 10. No, Daddy, it's 9 in the morning. And then the next time it actually came around, it was 10:30. So we had missed that 10 o'clock window in that morning. So no, Daddy, it's 10:30. And that actually seemed like, by his demeanor, that might not have been the right 10 anyway, because he didn't change, he didn't look distraught. He just kind of kept moving through the calendar and now the clock. So Wednesday came, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday came. So Monday was kind of significant because now we have, building on a 2-week cycle here, this man's only words is the date and the time. In that time, he was just taking sips of water and then coming down to Sunday and Monday, almost taking nothing in. A lot of effort being made by family, by nurses' aides from hospice, us nurses from hospice, and a lot of support for the family to really keep his body comfortable. Some liquid pain medicine to put under his tongue when it looked like he was grimacing or distraught. And again, he did not seem anxious, though. That was kind of a significant part of this. He had some clarity. So Monday came, and then Tuesday came. And so the family was around, and again, I was watching these men in relationship to this man. Huge tears. They would come into the hospital bed. It was actually in the middle of the living room, a very large living room with a big fireplace and a big long beam of wood for a mantle, and crafted stonework. So it was beautiful. But in the middle of this huge living room is this hospital bed, and these friends and even aunts and uncles would come in and spend some time with him and walk out of the room truly weeping. And it was incredible, because I really found my place was not to be in that room. A lot of times the family really likes a hospice team member to kind of be there and help kind of guide them along or be an anchor. He was the anchor, and that was kind of just how it was. And I would stay in a different room and really not impose, but to watch all this love happening. So here comes Monday, and here comes Tuesday morning at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5. And you can just imagine the fatigue of everyone kind of riding this out literally hour by hour. And amazingly, at 10 in the morning on Tuesday, he just quietly stopped breathing and died. You can say that he translated. You can say that he moved on. I think all of those things are true, and the term that I like to use is spiritually graduate. And it literally was at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. Amazing. So again, I stayed for probably about 3 hours after that. More family was called and came. A lot of people wanted to come once he had passed. They had already said their goodbyes and their I love you, see you laters. So more family came, and just more tears of love. Kind of finished stuff up for that day, made a plan to go to the funeral home actually for the next day. So all these things were in place, and it was quite beautiful. What's amazing, like that wasn't enough, is part 2. Is I actually came back to work the following Friday, and had been asked by this eldest daughter to make sure that the staff told me that she needed to talk with me, and she wouldn't say what it was. And one of those things was just good. She said it wasn't bad, it's just important. So I came to work that following Friday, and I called her, and I said, how's it going? She said, good. You know, of course, we're all very, very sad, and we miss Daddy already. But she says, are you sitting down? Nice. Said, I'm not, but I can be. So I sat down, and I knew I was in for an adventure here. And she says, so you remember with Daddy the whole thing about, is it Tuesday yet? And then that moved on to, is it Tuesday at 10? And then he died Tuesday morning at 10. I said, yeah, just one of the most amazing things. I said, did you put a meaning to that? And she says, no, none of us actually could figure out any historical thing that happened on Tuesday at 10, why he would want to be heading to heaven on Tuesday at 10. We just know that, as you were witnessing there, by being there, that it was true, that he did pass then. She said, I want to tell you the rest of the story. She said, so that, you know, that day we got the hospital bed out of the room, and all the medical stuff out. And she said, actually, Tuesday night, she said, we were all exhausted, and she said, I actually counted in the room of everyone that was there pretty much from the beginning of the weekend through Tuesday night was 12, between the 3 daughters, the patient's wife, aunts, uncles, and this group of these incredibly endearing old fellows that loved this man so much and had shared so much of their lives together. She said there were 12 of us. She says, so then we're all sitting there, and it's late at night. It's been so exhausting, and how many times do you say, what happened? And she said that was probably the most tiring part of all, is saying the whole thing over and over and over again. And yes, it's exciting, and yes, it's endearing, and of course the unanswered question got asked a million times, why then? Why do you think then? So she said by the time all this happened at night, we were spent. And we're actually, she said, we're all spread out in that big living room. And so she said, so you know the mantle of that carved stone fireplace and that big beam of wood, the mantle of the fireplace? I was like, yeah, I kind of remember that. She says, do you remember the 2 big plates that were there? And I was like, not really. She says, well, on the left and the right, there were about 14 or 16 inches. There are these huge, huge plates that were actually hand-painted and hand-kilned in Italy. And the reason they're on the mantle is they went to Italy when they were very, very young early newlyweds, and it was the only trip they made outside the United States. And it had huge significant value for them because it was such a big trip. It was a very romantic trip. It was one of those, nothing could have gone any better than it did. So it always represented kind of the highest ideal of the expansion of their love, was these 2 plates on the mantle. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. She says, okay, so we were sitting there, the daughter's telling me, we're exhausted, and we're so exhausted, the TV's not on, no music, nobody's even talking. And she said it was the weirdest thing because nobody seemed distraught that none of us are talking. It's just quiet. And it's kind of reverent for all of us. And we're just sitting there in this huge silence. And all of a sudden we hear this ping twice. And by ping I mean, you know how if you take a plate or a piece of china and you kind of clicked it with your finger like that it would make this kind of ting sound? And we all heard it, and we actually heard 2 little pings at the exact same second, enough to differentiate that there were 2. I'm like, okay. And where the sound was coming from was the mantle. And she said, I told you in the beginning there were 12 people in this room. And if all 12 of us didn't witness this, nobody could believe this story. So again, I hope you're sitting down. When that ping sound happened, it brought all of our attention up to the mantle. And what we saw were those 2 plates actually standing away from the wall, straight up, and slightly turned to the left. And what that means is they were suspended there, sitting on the mantle, and they both tipped at a slight angle, and they dropped onto the mantle, and they began doing like a saucer, ding 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 ding, and all of us actually scared, she said, and alarmed, and a couple people actually stood up, and we all sat there. She's saying her and her 2 sisters sat and watched these plates spinning and going faster and faster and faster and faster until they finally stopped. And she said it was scary, it was alarming, it was so loud, and it was the only sound going on in the house. And she said I was sitting there in a chair, actually on a couch, she said, with one sister to the left and the youngest sister to the right. And it was totally alarming, and it totally freaked all of us out, she said. And then the sound stopped. And this eldest daughter said, myself and her middle daughter, sister, said at the exact same time, "Daddy!" And everybody leaned back and took a breath because they realized that it was him making this connection through these objects to show that he's still connected to them through the highest object of love in that house. And when everybody kind of caught their breath and realized that, she said it was electrical. It was like alarming and exciting and fantastic all at the same time. Just watching these plates spin, watching them drop, and then me and my sister saying, "Daddy!" at the same time. And then it got real quiet again. And then my youngest sister put her head down and she said to me, she says, "Hey, what time is it?" And everybody looked down and looked over and looked at whatever they had, and it was 10 p.m. Can you imagine? She said we were so exhausted and it was so stunning that we actually couldn't say anything. She said there was probably 10 seconds where we actually didn't say anything. We just sat with our mouths open because there was nothing else to say. He had validated and helped us get to this point where he made this 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. connection for our love for him. And at 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. on Tuesday, he actually demonstrated his love for us by making the effort to connect through these huge objects of love from Italy, from one of the most sentimental parts of his life, to the love of his wife at 10 p.m. on that same day. Isn't that incredible? Thank you.